All right. Real quick, if you want, I still have a few of those review books left down there on that bottom shelf, the blue ones. If anybody wants those, they're good books, good questions, and you can have it so you can write on it. It has great review questions for the AP exam. So if anybody wants one after the class, you can go grab one. If there's a fight over it, we'll circle the desk and we'll brawl.
Oh, yeah.
We'll do a cage match for the book. 2 people will go in, 1 will come out. Sounds good. All right, where? Everyone's watching somebody walking down that little sidewalk there, and all of a sudden it's a bouncing head. Maybe they have a chat today. Terrifying, but cool. So do we get to this? Yeah.
Horses and dad.
Did we show you the horses? Did I show you? Did I show you?
And there are all the people, so pictures of.
Oh, yeah, right there, right there.
Here. Did I show you this?
Yeah.
Yes.
No one likes the pig.
Oh, yeah, I
So
remember.
just to review, the Blatant Antitrust Act. What was the commission it would create that would regulate or at least control legal restraint of trade, control restraint of trade, and also stop mergers that might be monopolies? What's that commission?
FTC.
Yeah, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. The Keating-Owens Act tried to ban what?
Child labor.
And what happened to it?
Unconstitutional.
Unconstitutional. It deprived children's ability to make contracts. That's actually the real reason why which is amazing. 10-year-olds are fantastic at contract law. And what would be created that would control interest rates for federal funds, and therefore the federal funds rate, and therefore control the money supply? A national bank. Yeah, the Federal Reserve System. So really important, 2 amendments. 16th Amendment allowed for what? Income tax. 17th allowed for direct election of senators. There's 2 more progressive amendments, the 18th prohibition, the 19th women's suffrage. But they were so intertwined with the war. We'll kind of come back to a little bit of the progressive there, even though wars always end reform movements. We'll talk about that. So we got to there. So we got here. Want to look at this a little bit more? We can reproduce this on the next test, can't we? Draw this.
I think I could.
Switzerland would be easy. What is Switzerland? What's that? It's a fish. What is what? Italy? I can show. Don't forget, look at Serbia. So you'll think, by the way, for Montenegro as a roly-poly bug. So look at Serbia, and I'll show you a real map, and it's kind of amazing. That's pretty close. All right, so let's get to the factors that led to the war. And there's no one single factor. Of course, at this scale, it's hard to. There's rarely one factor, but in World War II, we could see certain things. This one is much more broad, and industrialization was happening to the United States too, and all the changes that caused. But the big one, where they're thinking more like, was all across Europe. And don't forget, Britain started it, U.S., and then like Belgium. Actually, you can see it in kind of all the same reason. But here, so what is now Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, France. That's where it began next. Russia was just maybe 15 years into the Industrial Revolution. And so, yeah, different degrees. But what it created were, I got so many maps. It's awesome. I need a few more maps on that stuff to make this suit. Yeah. Inequalities. The thought was the vast inequalities, especially Europe, was already so unequal. With its tiny minority having so much of the wealth. Well, think about capital. Really expensive, so only if you can afford it. The profits flow to who has the capital, the great incentive for why people do it. But that's going to lead to huge inequalities and the talk of a class war all the time. And we've already talked about that in the United States about revolution. But the fear was socialist or anarchist revolution. There's assassinations all over. The president was assassinated of the United States. And they talked about it, okay, US, it's revolution, revolution, revolution. Here in Europe, it was Armageddon. Armageddon is coming. And it's really interesting how they talked about that and how we're gonna have to fight everybody. And this concept here of Armageddon, there'll be a class war. And at the same time, it was basically just monarchies creating armies. But they thought it would be different. By the way, beautiful Manchester, England, and the wonders of coal. Very dirty. Well, one thing about this, you're gonna have a lot of people that were healthier before the Industrial Revolution. In rural areas, go to the big city and health declined for so many of the working class. And yet for the other, the haves, they're doing better than ever before. And people were starting to live longer, the populations were going up. And at the same time, when the British Army tried to recruit soldiers, they were having trouble finding people to meet their minimum standards in 1914, which was literally 5'4" and 14th. 14th. They were having trouble finding people. And that shows you how bad their diet was. And people were shrinking. That's how bad the diet was in some parts. So we have this really weird contradiction. But also, more innovation, more products, and more wealth created than ever before. More abundance than ever before. All this contradiction. And so you have great wealth being created and people with very little who wanted power. But there's something else that goes along with this. This you might remember from the Civil War. Remember how everyone thought, still thought, one big battle in the war, it's all over. And it'd be a battle of tactics and maneuver and great generals and warriors fighting and this warrior code. No. With industrialization, better weapons, more technology, better ways to kill someone. Industrial power meant military power. It wasn't so much you were better soldiers, that you had more ways to kill, a way to add access to explosives. Higher, bigger powered guns, better ships, better steel. So if it became a war of industry, despite they all say it to this day, we'll win the war, it always devolves into something else. What's going to become targets? Here's a British shell making factory. And can't get factories, you knock out where they go. What became factories, or what became targets? The factories, the workers. And we already gave you, the royal we, already gave you a term for that. You might remember Sherman's March to the Sea. What is this called? Total war. The term total war will come out of World War I. It'll be done by a German general named Ludendorff. Total war. And you remember the term for you kill so many of the enemy they can no longer fight? Attrition. So if you knock out their factories, they can no longer fight. Wars are going to become so horrible. Good times. But while this drastic change, you still got 16th and 17th century monarchs. They still think it's 1580 and they're divine right. And even places like England that had a constitutional monarch, the king still thought they were special. Social Darwinism definitely played into that. Divine right, power from the God, gods on earth, like the Tsar of Russia. And so you have this old monarchs, in the country, the nation based upon the monarch, the king represented it, to this new world of industry, people wanting more rights. So it's a real contradiction. Anybody know who that's a picture of right here? The 50-year Diamond Jubilee for the reign of Queen Victoria of England. She was the longest serving monarch in England, but Queen Elizabeth, who just passed away a few years ago, would pass her. And even though she was by then not that much power, she represented the new mighty British Empire. But all of these people here are in royal families throughout Europe, and they are all directly related to Queen Victoria. Every single one. Remember I told you about kings and inbreeding? Inbreeding. And the thing about monarchies, whoever's the heir, that's who you get. And you're stuck with this inbred fool. Okay, I don't like monarchs. Well, there's the queen. Her son, Bertie, right? Queen's niece happened to be the Kaiserina of Germany. That means her stepson was Kaiser's Frederick William of Germany. He died of throat cancer really young and replaced by his young son, Queen Elizabeth's nephew, great nephew, Kaiser Wilhelm II. Her other niece, another niece of hers, daughter, niece married, that's niece, married him, the Tsar of Russia. They're all related. Another cousin is over here. Where are we at here? Yeah, the Kaiser of Bulgaria, which I always find interesting. We'll have Bulgaria, we'll give ourselves an emperor. We'll make ourselves an emperor. They're all related. They're all cousins. And so here's King George V, who'd be the king of Germany during the war, and he is cousins and close to the Kaiser of Germany, the Tsar of Russia, etc. They're all interrelated. It's kind of startling when you really start going into all these family members. She had a huge family. And she did say about her nephew, Kaiser Wilhelm II, William. He deserved a good spanking because he was an obnoxious, arrogant kid. He'd be the Kaiser of Germany. And if they're all related, she was a carrier of a disease. She didn't have it, but a disease. Anybody know what disease? Hemophilia. And we will come back to hemophilia in just a second. So let me give you an idea of the problem of having these monarchs. Now, Germany did have a constitution, but the Kaiser had great power, especially Kaiser controlled the foreign policy and army, and could veto anything out of their legislature. The Kaiser's almost autocratic. So Kaiser William or Wilhelm II. His father died. He was king very young, and he had problems his whole life. Partially, mostly, going back to what happened in childhood. You see everything that would cause him nothing but resentment and anger to his entire life. That's him. That's him. You see it? He had a massive spike pounded into his head. No. You see it? During childbirth, he was in breech birth. And they had to use forceps, and in the process, they dislocated his shoulder. They didn't know. So they armed everyone. And so his arm was about 2/3 as long, basically withered, had no, could barely do anything with it. And his hand was about half the size of his other hand. And so his whole life he would try to hide it. You notice how he tailored the suit and to cover his hand. And he always, you really see it here, always be holding something in every photograph. And turn with his arm bent. So you couldn't see how short it was, and you couldn't see his hand. He hid him like this. Now the thing about a Kaiser, pick all the monarchs, they're warriors. I mean, they're supposed to be warriors, especially the Prussian king, German monarch. This is going to be the commander of the most powerful army in the world. How can you be a warrior with a withered left arm? And his father, in the tradition of all monarchs, the king hated his son, and vice versa, was infuriated with his weakness. And he would put him through absolute hell to show he would be a warrior. And so as a little kid, he had to learn how to compensate for it. And one of the big things is riding a horse. And I don't mean just for a trot. He was going to be in the army. He was going to the military academy. All sons of monarchs were in the military academy. And he had to learn how to ride in the gallop and lead in the cavalry and fight from the saddle. How do you fight from the saddle with one arm? And so his tutor would, and I'm not exaggerating, beat him without mercy with rods, 2 to 3 inch thick rods, without mercy to get him to run. So can you imagine how that would affect you at 5 or 6 years old? And he figures everyone is making fun of him, laughing at him. I'll show you. I might have a withered arm, but I could use the strongest one. So he was insecure his whole life. For example, when he became emperor and they would have war games, he would act like he was the general on one side and his side always had. It'd be really bad. So I think you see an issue there. To make himself strong, when he went to before he went to the academy, which by then he absolutely despised his father, but he would work to strengthen his right arm and he would chop wood, one arm, and he had the axe. The axe was at this museum I saw in Berlin. This double-bladed axe. And he would, with one arm, chop wood for hours on end every day. So he had a powerful right arm. So he could balance and shoot a long rifle accurately with one arm. And I think often those anybody shot, you know how hard that would be. Strong he had to be. So this is what he would do. When he would meet people, okay, they come bow and he would handshake. But if you shake hands with the emperor, you don't really try to come and squeeze the emperor's hand. So if people put their hands out there, and every once in a while, he would just grab it and start squeezing as hard as he could. And his hand was powerful. And he would start, you hear the knuckles crack, sometimes he would break knuckles, and hold them there, make them go down to their knees, crying and agony. He would just be talking to someone else, holding this guy, and then let him go after 2 or 3 minutes. That's not normal. And he's going to be the emperor. He's going to be jealous of his aunt's navy, Queen Victoria, jealous of their empire, jealous of French culture. I mean, you name it, he'll be jealous of it. How insecure? There's no bounds. Here's another one. Here's another one. Tsar Nicholas II. Same deal. His father, Tsar Alexander, hated him. He hated his father. The Russians are autocratic, full control. Almost forgot something. Kaiser, Tsar. Anybody know what that means? What means? It means emperor, but what Kaiser is a translation of what word? Caesar. Yeah. Even though Caesar was never an emperor, but Caesar. Who was the first Roman emperor? Augustus. Yeah, Augustus. I think you learn everything. We get Roman history. We should take a few days about Roman history.
Yeah.
Actually, Roman history is amazing. After this. So Tsar Nicholas, same deal, his father died young. He was the emperor during the disaster of the Russo-Japanese. And then the revolution that happened during it, that nearly toppled the monarchy. That's in 1905, 1906. To give you an idea how ill prepared he was, when he became emperor, he sat in his room and cried for 2 days. Because he knew he was that ill prepared. When he found out about the terrible defeat, remember I told you about the Russian fleet that sailed all the way from here, all the way around Africa. They got crushed by the Japanese at the Battle of Tsushima. He was playing tennis with his wife at a resort here called Yalta. Well, we'll get back to that. I mean, might have heard it before. But he was told our fleet has been destroyed. Now, what is supposed to be the reaction of the emperor when your fleet would be destroyed? Oh no! You know what his reaction was? He sold his tennis racket, and supposedly he said, "Oh, thank you. Whose service is it?" That's how ill prepared he was for that position. And in fact, he's supposed to be like a god on earth. And he was this, well, very average looking person. Especially when his father was kind of huge for the time, and he wasn't. That doesn't matter, except when you want to act like a god. Here's the other thing. Russian czars had to have a male heir. Has anyone ever heard of one of the most famous Tsarinas of Russia, Catherine the Great? She was so great that after she died, her son who succeeded her and others made sure that from then on, it is decreed that only male heirs in Russia. Because can't have a woman be powerful. Yeah. They're too powerful as our Tsarinas. So, when he got married to Queen Victoria's niece, they had 4 daughters. And this was a big issue. Because how could a god on earth not have a son? Now, of course. But the point is, if you want to act like a god on earth, you got to do things like, I'm going to have a son now. And then they finally had a son. Victoria, remember, it's related. What disease did Alexei have? What is hemophilia? That's bad, but that's not the bad thing. You know what the bad thing is? Sure. It's a bruise. A bruise, internal bleeding. I've had a few students who have hemophilia. They can control it with medication, but it's really dangerous now. It was terrifying. Because think about little kids. What do little kids when you run around and they fall and they get bruises? And one little bruise can kill them. And it's not a short deal. It's weeks, agony. I guess the pain is beyond comprehension. That just never quits bleeding. So what do kids do? Well, first off, what do parents do if they have some daughter that has hemophilia? Can't play, we got a lot of people in. What do you want to do? You can't play. You do anything you can to play. In fact, children with hemophilia will be infamous for taking just incredible risks when they thought they didn't have a chance to play. Like climbing along the ledge of the 5-story summer palace. Or climbing along 15-foot fences. And then would catch them up there. Just playing, I run away, and he'd like jump and try to get high. As high as he can. He fell off a fence and got a bruise here. He was about 9, no, I'm sorry, about 6. Just a little, looked like just sort of a little blood. And within 3 days, it was 8 sizes tons. It's a massive thing, and he was screaming in pain. He would sometimes pass out from the agony of the pain. And it's going to kill him. All the blood is just pooling right there. They heard of a healer who was a self-proclaimed monk, Orthodox monk from Siberia, by the name of Rasputin. And Rasputin just happened to show up. Okay, Rasputin was angling her way to get in some influence into it. He just, I'll tell you this, I don't really want. But Rasputin was brought to Alexei, and he felt better almost immediately. Almost immediately. And the swelling finally began to reduce. And what? And you can imagine what the Tsar thought. He's never leaving Alexei's son. So all of a sudden now, this impoverished monk from 1,000 miles away near Irkutsk is now part of the royal family. Yet, 2 things. First off, the God on earth had a son with hemophilia, so they never told anybody. Not only what was wrong, if there was anything wrong with him. So nobody outside the inner circle knew. And secondly, nobody knew why Rasputin was there all the time. And so Rasputin would go out in St. Petersburg and drink more than any human could drink. And get drunk and fight and carouse. They're wondering, why is this horrible man near the king? And all these, especially wives and daughters of nobility, thought he had some kind of magical powers. So they just would flock to him. And so he had these, and then he had innumerable affairs with them. And they're wondering, why is this luxurious man living with the king, with the Kaiser? And this would become, therefore, the symbol of how corrupt the monarchy was, would be Rasputin. Now, I'll tell you a little bit more about Rasputin down the road. And the assumption was he was giving disastrous advice, which he kind of was, because he was taking advantage. Oh, one more thing. There immediately became a rumor that he and the Tsarina were having an affair. You can imagine how that would happen. They were not. That's almost certainly not true. But that just shows you how it just made this monarchy that was trying desperately to hold on seem more desperate. So, oh, one more thing. I didn't put his picture up there, but the Kaiser of Austro-Hungary, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Franz Joseph. Franz Joseph became Kaiser in 1848. He would not die until 1916. He was 84 years old when the war began. And he is desperately trying to hold on to this empire. That is what they were stuck with. He's born in 1930. 1830. Went backwards in time. Look at those. Don't they look like twins? To give you an idea how closely they're related, Tsar Nicholas II, King George V. It's just wild. Next, imperialism. All these wars for empire. Don't forget, the United States started with a war for empire. The French and Indian War, the American Revolutionary War turned into a war for empire. There were wars for empire all the time. The Napoleonic Wars would devolve into a war for empire. So you have all these competitions for empire and land stretching into each other. This is one of the reasons why, Washington kind of warned against this back in his farewell address. But the big place you see that, look at the first area. Look at Europe. In Central Europe, these are all empires. Numerable countries there today, but we have Germany. I always say Austria, but 1867 it became the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Russia. I know it says Poland there, but there was no Poland. And it doesn't have it on here, but much of it, but the Ottoman Empire, which was much of the Middle East. And these were all empires. And so you had constant fighting. Russia and the Ottoman Empire fought 3 different times in the 19th century. And Russia and Austria went to war once and almost went to war a couple other times. 1870, Russia, which would become their king would become the king of Germany, the emperor of Germany, and France had a massive war. Fighting all the time. And so the whole point was always kind of a powder keg. All of these states right here had just won their independence from the Ottoman Empire. So all these empires, but where you really see it is in Africa. In 1860, almost all of Africa was still independent, ravaged by the slave trade, but independent. But then all the technological inventions would allow for Europe to take it. That's 1914. Only 2 places are left that are independent. One, Abyssinia, which today we call Ethiopia. And you remember the American Colonization Society that was created during slavery? The thought was that slavery is evil, but they wanted a white republic. And so enslaved people would, once they were emancipated or they bought their freedom, they would be sent to Africa. You remember the country they created. Yeah, that's it. British, French, Belgium brutally held the Congo. Unbelievable what happened there. Portugal, Spain, France, even Germany got a few. They all got a piece of Africa. And it would show this competition because a number of times there was nearly a war. Most famously, Germany and France over Morocco. And at Pashuda, Britain and France almost went to war. And that was just a decade before the World War I. And so this constant threat of war. And that leads directly to nationalism. We talked about nationalism before, but nationalism, in the most generic sense, every nation's national identity, usually it's language and their ethnic group based upon their unique cultural differences. Of course, language is the biggie. There'll be other ones, but this national identity. And it's pretty easy to see in Western Europe, yeah, it's kind of happened. These are very generic. It's much more complex than this. But for the most part, this is the country of the French. England, even though they would conquer Wales, Scotland, and Ireland, but still England. But Italy, it says Italians, but there was a vast difference. Northern Italy, Central Italy, Southern Italy, it's like different worlds. It is just, it's really different. But they were able to say we're close enough, and eventually in the 1860s became one entity. Germans, you can see that German speakers, but look, there are German speakers in other areas. But then you see this. And so let's review. Nationalism is what? You love your country, what? Yeah. So intense devotion to your state because it's your state. But what if you don't have a state? What if you're the Poles, the Slovenes, Slovaks, Czechs, Romanians, Serbians, Mexico, Croatians? These places won their independence. Greece, eventually the Serbs, Bulgarians, Romanians from the Ottomans. But you have all these people without a state. And then the weird ones, there's not a lot of ethnic difference. But, I mean, to somebody, I look at it, I can't tell the difference between what's a white Russian and a great Russian. You know what country that is today? Belarus. And beginning in about 1890s, all of a sudden the people who lived there were Ukrainian nationals. They'd always been mistreated by the Russians, but they were ethnic a little different. Also, we want to be a Ukraine. All these things, but want to be independent. And so we also have political independence for our ethnic group. Look at the map. Remember, you have all these different empires. Look at all the different ethnic groups, and this is a very generic map. Who's threatened by the desire of political independence from these different groups? Not everyone. Empires. And that's what we need, empires. Now, most of the groups in Central and Eastern Europe are one ethnic group, kind of a blanket ethnic group. Poles are this group, Croats, Serbs, Slovaks, some Romanians, Ukrainians, Lithuanians, well, I'm sorry, Latvians, Estonians, White Russians, Great Russians. What is the name for these people here? Most of them. Have you ever heard the term Slav? Slav? They're Slavs. And so there's all these Slavic ethnic groups and they want independence. And that began a movement you start seeing in the 1870s. Kind of related to back in the 1830s when all these people who spoke German wanted to have a Germany. They called it Pan-Germanism in the 1830s. They called it Pan-Slavism in the 1890s. They wanted a Slavic state. So intense Slavic nationalists. Now this isn't going to quite work because, yeah, they're Slavs, but Croats, Slovenes, Bosnians, etc., are a little bit different. But if you look at that map, the color areas, that's just the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And look at all the different large ethnic groups there. Look at the red. Those are just splotches of German-speaking people. So that wasn't part of Germany. Austrians are Germans. This was never part of Germany. So World War II, that's another story. But, and the little splotches. They were independent. And that means the Austro-Hungarian Empire is in their way. Austria-Hungary is in their way. So, any movement for independence here threatens Austria, which is now becoming a weak empire, desperate to hold on. Well, right here, Serbia. And Serbia had won their independence in a brutal civil war against the Ottomans. They were known for being one of the more brutal, just nasty, bloody monarchies. But they were brave and they would fight against anybody. And they said, we'll be the defender of those poor Serbs, I'm sorry, those poor Slavs in Austria, and we'll create a giant pan-Slavic state that we'll just happen to call Greater Serbia. And the king of Serbia will be the head of this state. Now, let me ask you a quick question. Does anybody know what country this eventually there would be a Greater Serbia? What country would that become? That's Yugoslavia. One more thing, you see Serbia? You see it? Everyone see Serbia? Doesn't it kind of look like a pig? Everybody showed you that picture? Doesn't it kind of have the snout? Yeah. So here's the deal. If Serbia says we will help the Slav revolt, that means we have Serbia versus Austria. And therefore, Serbia is a threat to Austria. Austria should be stronger than Serbia. But Austria is weak. And there's one more thing. What is the largest Slavic country in the world? It still is. I said it. Russia. Russia. And Russia doesn't particularly like Serbia, but they see themselves as the defender of the Slavs, and they hate Austria. They hate Austria. Okay, has anyone ever heard of Bosnia versus Herzegovina? That Austria annexed that in 1908, and it infuriated Russia, but they couldn't do anything because they just lost to Japan. That war I told you about earlier. Yeah. And the Tsar, who's already humiliated and feels weak, vowed to never allow that to happen again. This is what we call foreshadowing. See, it's alliterate. Right. Yeah, wow is right. So, one more thing. What's Austria's only ally? Germany. Do you see where this is going? Germany is stuck with their only major ally being a weak country like Austria. So they got to keep Austria going. So Austria is threatened, Germany has no choice. That's the way they see it. And so that's our situation. So this is called the Balkan Peninsula. And by the 1880s, they're calling this the Balkan powder keg. And that might blow all of Europe up. But speaking of, oh, I better show you that map. Isn't that kind of amazing what's going to come out of just 4 years? Well, the war ended in 1918, but they would duke it out over these borders until mid-1923, especially Greece and Turkey. They still hate each other.
Yeah.
Look at all the different countries. And it corresponds. See that? Not completely. Yeah, there would be a Poland, but 40% of the population of Poland aren't Poles. And like today, that's Ukraine. And so that's what's going to come out of this. But nationalism, gotta get German. So Germany was created in 1871. And the problem Germany had was it was an empire. It was made up of a bunch of kingdoms. If you ever see a map of Germany from about 1630, there's over 1,000 kingdoms and city-states that are now in Germany. But even in 1870, there was a dozen. So Germany became an empire in 1871. The king of Russia, whose capital was Berlin, became the emperor of Germany. But all these other places like Bavaria was still a kingdom. So within the German Empire, there was a kingdom of Bavaria. When World War I started, there was the Imperial German Army, but part of it was the Bavarian Army. When Adolf Hitler volunteered to fight in World War I, just days after the war began, he didn't fight in the Imperial German Army. He fought in the Bavarian Army under the great German General Staff. So there are some people who found themselves as Bavarians, or from Württemberg or Baden-Baden, or even Bremen was an independent little duchy. That remind you of anything? What did citizens of the United States call themselves before the War of 1812 and the Battle of Tippecanoe?
Virginians.
Or whatever state they're from. Just like this. After that, remember, they started calling themselves Americans. Well, same thing here. So there was a movement to create a common German identity for all the German speakers, even though Bavarians aren't much alike Russians. And in fact, they still hate each other today. So if you go to Munich and you say you were in Berlin, you will be told they're not real Germans. And if you go to Berlin, you will be told that if you're in Bavaria, they're not real Germans. So my wife's sister married a Berliner, and I was with him in Munich, and he made it very clear, at least once an hour, that these aren't real Germans. And that was 2016. So, Germans, nothing like America. Moving on. So back in the beginning of the 1830s, 1840s, they started trying to make up a German mythology, saying, even if you're from Württemberg, we're all Germans. We're all Germans. And they literally made it up. They took a few little myths of Germanic tribes, they took a lot of Norse Viking myths, and they just made up stuff and created a German identity. We are Germans with this great ancestry. And they literally made it up. So when Germany did become an empire, they could say, oh, sure, you might be from Bavaria or wherever, but we're all Germans. And so, what did they say? What makes us great? Hey, it's just Germans. But we're superior. We have the greatest philosophers, the greatest artists, the greatest composers, the greatest scientists, all in Germany. And the Prussians had to be very clear about this too, and the British soldiers. And they called this a proper noun called culture. And that was German superiority. And what they said is, we are great, and they're trying to keep us from becoming one Germany. France is trying to keep us from becoming one Germany because they're jealous of us. They hate us and they want to weaken us, and that's why they are potential enemies. And so it would say to Bavarians, and this was very effective when it became an empire. You might not like Prussia, but we're closer to you than the French. And so they created this great, their symbolic goddess Germania. This is a massive statue, bigger than the Statue of Liberty on the Rhine River in Koblenz. And look at the medals they would give to German soldiers in the war. They made millions of these. And notice it says for culture. And one more thing. Actually, they gave these to German soldiers. I found this one, almost forgotten. That was given to a British. But one thing I'll tell you really quick. See the year? Germany always rated their base your wars on what year it started. So that's World War I. See, those of you who have read ahead in history, what World War II? 39. So, culture. Everyone's jealous. Why are they jealous? Well, Germans are superior. And then what philosophy came about in the 1860s, saying there's hierarchy of class or color of skin, and it's all natural. Social Darwinism fit in perfectly, doesn't it? Because what makes Germans superior? There must be something about being German. German people must be superior, and we're all them. Then, and what are we? A separate race. Superior race. And beginning in the 1880s, what did they begin to call themselves? And everybody is jealous. They must preserve the Aryan race. Aryans. Now, Aryans, where are Aryans from? I'm scared to move my map. Yeah. No, that's cool. We just do it for a second. Aryans come from right here. And they're basically like nomadic horsemen. And that's the name they gave the Germanic warriors who came in here during the Roman Empire. So right here. That's the big point. And that was a mythology. That kind of goes back to the 1700s. But by the 1890s, you start seeing Germans being called this separate race called Aryans. Now, no, there are, and there's a people that they call Aryans. But that's not them. Anybody know where the Aryans are from? In fact, there's a country that their name literally means Aryan. All of you should know because the United States is right now threatening to go to war with Iran. Yes, a war. It's literally, we have the biggest armed military buildup since 2003 at this moment. And nobody is really sure why. And I'm actually very clear about it. I wish I could be clear, but kind of hinted at it about nuclear weapons, but right now, I don't know what's going to come out of this. But if you know anything about people from Iran and people from Germany, well, there are ethnic differences. There are good differences. But look at this picture. This was a postcard they gave to kids in Germany so they could write to soldiers at the front how lonely the soldiers at the front would be. And it's showing the fight. First off, we see 1914. And it's everyone's out to get the Germans because they're jealous and hate. There's Germany. And everyone's attacking. Let's see if we can guess what countries these represent.
Don't even children.
France. United States. Russia. That's supposed to be vague Asia. Britain. Vague Arabia. Italy. Vague Africa. And everyone's jealous of Turkey. Hey, if everyone's jealous at us, and there's more of them, they're going to get us sometime, right? They're going to kill us sometime. They're going to destroy our race sometime. What are we going to have to do? First, they're going to attack us. And I promise you, the last thing you have to write. Who believes me? I will do. Thank you for +1 there. While the France have their own issues, intense French nationalism, they lost 2 territories to Germany back in 1870, called Alsace and Lorraine. And France wanted those back. And what's the only way to get that land back? By attacking Germany. And so the entire French nationalism was, we're going to show how brave and tough the French are. And we're going to defeat them. And if you know anything about French soldiers, very good fighters, intensely brave. But to show you how poorly they're led, by 1910, everybody realized you can't have brightly colored uniforms anymore. These new weapons are too deadly. Everybody but the French. I know this is a painting, but this is a painting of the charge in 1914. Look at the color uniform the French holds. Red pants, navy blue coat, red hat. Because the French were going to say, we're not afraid of a bullet, we're brave. What do you think that did against machine guns? Good fighters, terribly led, but they won World War I. Good fighters in World War II, horrifically led. For those of you who have read ahead in history, did I lie? Next. Hey, what do you got to check tomorrow if you're going to be gone? Me? I'll write. If you're going to be gone, check. I'll give you an opportunity for extra. I just haven't decided what it is. I'm going to be losing a day, so I'm going to move some things around. Not a big deal. For almost. Don't talk about it. Oh, get Jake. So what's that? So that's Panda Express. I didn't know that. So basically, you're trying to fight in the galaxy. Goodbye, everybody. I'll just like the water. Socks? Does anybody want to review one? They're very good books. You can have them. If it turns out you don't like them, don't use them.
They're signed. Which one are they?
I will, the blue ones on the bottom shelf. It's so funny. The guy who made it is like literally right before his growth spurt. Because he, right? No. The ones on the bottom shelf.
Oh, these ones.
Yeah.
There we go.
If you want one, you can have one. They're good books.
APUSH presidency. I got.
All right, see you tomorrow, John.
See ya.
Yeah, there's a CD inside here.
No, not really. No.
So you're good to stay. You're good to stay.
Wait, is that the lowest you want?
We can make. I'll take it.
No.
All right, then let him out.
It's actually more comfortable on the arms.
So we had someone in there, and in fact, it was the person who made it years ago. And it was like 30 seconds, and they're laughing, and that was their fault. And then all of a sudden, they were little like. All right, see you. Bye. Maps. It should be easy.
Thank you. Are they due tomorrow?
Sunday, Monday. Monday, because if you have any questions tomorrow, I can answer them, yeah.
Thank you very much.
And you probably get half it or most of it. Most of it just remembering and, a few things, where the battles are and stuff.
See you tomorrow.
All right, see you tomorrow. Uh-oh,
Hey,
what's up?
much.
Any more questions for us?
No quiz today. Is you gonna follow my advice on the bridge?
Sure, if I see it.
Just lay it across.
Oh, yeah. We should do that. Doesn't actually.
I just put it in those two desks, you got it, it's set, that's bridge. Why make it difficult?
I know, we have to prove to her mom that all of her kids are elite people.
What?
Her mom was bragging that someone in her family won the bridge contest like every year.
What, like 3 years?
Yeah.
Well,
Except me and Brady won it last year.
Not like one, but like place.
oh, come
Oh, so now it goes down, every,
Yeah.
they participated.
Now the truth comes out.
Yeah, pretty soon it'll be, they know what a bridge is.
Henry won it twice, Liza. I don't know if she won.
I'm pretty sure Eliza won it, Alex.
Yeah, Liza's about, so I'm the only one who has it.
So like a Briscoe wins it every year.
Well, Alex didn't win. I think Eliza was like second.
Yeah.
Pretty sure they lost to Henry actually.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Actually, Henry, and then I have a thing from Eliza, so she knit,
Really?
she made in,
I remember that. I remember that.
of the Bayou Tapestry, it's really
Yeah.
good.
What is it?
It's a pillow?
It wasn't a pillow, but the Bayou Tapestry is this massive tapestry, so it's all embroidered back in about 1080. But it's about the Battle of Hastings. You know the battle.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10. But it's a story of the battle, and for Western Civ, she did a scene of a ship crossing. It was really good.
Yeah,
was-
I would not be able to do that.
Oh,
When did you get this new map?
I've had that. I just didn't use it that much.
Yeah.
I want to be surrounded by maps.
Get this one back together from when it ripped.
And that one, but the one over there is the one that really ripped.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But that one's 55 years old. Back when it was, this used to be Sunhaven, not Capital.
Okay, when they like call it like Capitol and they have like that rock out in front, like, but it was here before then.
The Rock?
Yeah, like the rock.
That I don't know.
Well, because the rock, doesn't it say like first graduating class?
Yeah, so that's the first graduating class from Capital. Does it say Sunhaven?
I've never read it.
So you're just making this up?
Am I right?
I will go look at that. No, I think that's I think it was a class of 74. It was the first graduating class from Capital. That way, yeah, 74.
After we graduate, I think we're gonna take a trip to Miles City.
I don't know if you can handle it. The mean streets of Miles City.
Only the toughest can come out of there.
Yeah. I mean, all we're saying is we'll lose a couple.
Oh, we gotta go.
I gotta be honest with you. I don't think that would be a good graduation. I know, but yeah.
Oh,